This is really a very, very bad joke. As you mentioned, the only relevant other person that could be nominated together with UNRWA is Adolf Hitler. This is a genocidal organization that has come together with the terrorists in Hamas, in Palestinian Islamic Jihad, to really carry out one of the worst massacres that Israel has seen, and the worst massacre against Jews since the Holocaust. And now there's someone who's suggesting that this organization, which has failed really for the last 75 years to do anything apart from perpetuate hatred, should be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. If just the thought of this is just a disgrace.
Maurice, I know that you've been telling people about your work, showing the world what UNRWA has been responsible for years now. Why is it that the world has refused to listen?
Well, so the question is, why does the world really hate the Palestinians so much? I think that's really the right way to phrase this question. Why have they forced upon the Palestinians this organization whose sole goal is to perpetuate the idea of them being refugees? It's the only unique organization for one group of refugees that exists in the world. It keeps these Palestinians downtrodden, in poverty, and dependent on international aid instead of ever giving them some type of hope. They could have been resettled over the last 75 years, as millions of other refugees around the world have been. But UNRWA really keeps them down. UNRWA is using the Palestinians as a weapon, as leverage against the Jewish state. It has no other purpose in the world. There's no other way to explain the fact that the number of Palestinian refugees has ostensibly grown from 711,000 in 1949 to over 6.5 million people today. Zero success. And that's really what's going on. UNRWA is an organization run by the UN in order to attack Israel and uses the Palestinians simply as pawns.
You bring up an interesting question there, because you say UNRWA has done this, but is UNRWA and the UN here its own master, or are they serving other regional interests who are calling the shots for them?
Well, I think that to a great extent, the UN is calling most of the shots here. The UN has persuaded not the Arab world to fund UNRWA, but persuaded the entire Western world to fund UNRWA. They made sure that this is a problem of the Western world, that the Western world should be the ones supporting and undermining the Palestinians. At the same time, give them money to ensure that they stay downtrodden. That is something which really has been a tremendous disgrace. And now, once you have this UN that is dominated by all of these different dictatorships around the world, that will never allow the disbanding of UNRWA, as it should really be disbanded. And now, so the world is just stuck for seemingly for eternity with this organization that is bad for Israel, it's bad for the Palestinians, and it's bad for the world.
We have seen funding cut off in the past only to be restored. We've never seen funding cut off to this degree before. 12 nations, well over 60% of the budget, with extremely credible allegations and detailed dossiers showing exactly why. Will it have an effect this time, or is it just a few weeks down the road we'll see $400 million pour back in?
I think what's very, very sad in this context is that it took the October 7 massacre in order to get to this situation. The 1,200 plus UNRWA staff didn't join Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad since the 7th of October. They've been there all the way along. The 12, 13 members of Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and UNRWA, who took part actively in the October 7 massacre, haven't come about only since then, obviously. This has been the situation of the organization for many, many years. And now one would just hope that the international community is actually opening its eyes and saying, this cannot continue on. We are not willing to continue funding this organization in this manner. The United States is a leader in this. And what appears to have been the situation is really quite severe for the United States. In order for the United States to provide funding to UNRWA, the Secretary of State had to have certified in writing to Congress that UNRWA was meeting certain criteria, amongst others, that there were no terrorists receiving UNRWA funds, and that UNRWA was teaching an education curriculum that supported peace. Now, UNRWA has clearly misled, and I would say defrauded even, the US Secretary of State, and really forced him to present false certifications to Congress in order to receive that funding. That's something which I think needs to be much further investigated, and not only in Congress, all around the world. The countries donating money should know that their money isn't going for the resettlement of refugees. It isn't going for the improvement of their life. It's going for the perpetuation of the conflict, of the Palestinian fight against Israel until its demise. That's what they're supporting. And so one would hope now that after the October 7 massacre, that something would have changed in these countries, and finally they'll realize that they can't continue supporting that genocidal goals of Hamas and UNRWA together.